So tonight, when the going gets tough, what's the ending of that phrase? Yeah, you know that. But before we get to that, I have a joke for you. Do you know the little texting acronyms? ILY, what does that one mean? I love you. So sometimes the elder generations aren't quite hip to them. So these are some text exchanges. Mom, the mom text, your great aunt passed away, LOL. The son texts back, why is that funny? Mom says, it's not funny, David. What do you mean? Son, Mom, LOL means laughing out loud. Mom says, I thought it meant lots of love. I have some phone calls to make. So those who know, LOL means laughing out loud, okay. The daughter texts, I got an A in chemistry. Mom texts, WTF, exclamation mark. The daughter says, Mom, what do you think WTF means? Mom says, well, that's fantastic. And if you don't know what it means, ask one of the young ones before you leave tonight. Mom texts to her son, what do IDK, LY, and TTYL mean? The son texts back, I don't know, love you, talk to you later. Mom says, well, if you're not going to help, I'll ask your sister. It's all about communication. I love this t-shirt. Don't be happy, worry. Sometimes the order of things is important. Would you agree? I saw that this morning on Facebook, and I was like, oh, that's going to go in my talk somehow. So, how that ties into what I want to talk to you about is this. I believe that when the going gets tough, before the tough get going, we should do three things. Well, two things before that. We need to stop. We need to surrender. And then it's time to get going. So I hope that I'm going to make this make some sense for you. Why would we stop? When things get tough, when life throws us a curveball, when it's not going as we planned and we're stressed and we're in crisis even, why wouldn't we immediately want to get going and fix it? Why do you think we wouldn't? Because often the first thing that happens is what's called an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is a part of the brain that, it's an older part of the brain, and it is that emotional center. And when, actually I wasn't showing you this, but it's really kind of cool. Think of this as the brain stem, and this is the old reptilian brain. This is the reptilian brain. This is the old mammal brain, and this is the prefrontal cortex. Kind of looks like a brain, right? When we get triggered, when we get frightened, something shocks us, the first thing that happens is this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that controls higher reason and logic and good decision making, it disappears, and we go right to this part here, the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain. So we may do damage. If we act too soon while we're triggered, while we've reverted to some old ways of behavior and thinking. So the first thing I'm going to encourage us to do when the going gets tough is stop. Oprah says, if you don't know what to do, do nothing. She's smart, that Oprah. When you don't know what to do, do nothing. And just taking that pause from our lives, before we launch into the email in anger or the phone call, to just pause, stop. Now, here's where we have different temperaments. Some people, they just want to launch right into activity and action and fixing it. So you are the people that really need to pay attention to this one. For people who tend to be stopped a lot, people who will take any opportunity whatsoever to do nothing, you don't need to spend as much time here. Because stopping is not getting stuck. That's not what I'm talking about. This idea of pausing before we move forward, that is not the same thing as getting stuck in a ruminating. Do you know that word? Ruminating means where you get an idea or a thought and you just chew on it and chew on it and chew on it, and you think about it. Oh, why did she do that? And then she probably was thinking that I was doing that when I did that other thing, but and then why? And then you just, is that just me? Y'all know that, right? You can just go in circles in your head. That's not stopping. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is to get your mind quiet, and that may take some time. The breath is a beautiful tool for becoming present and stilling the mind. As a matter of fact, right now, just let all the air out of your body. Take a nice full in-breath. Pause. Let it go. Let's do that one more time together, breathing in. Feel this energy right here that we've created. That is what I'm talking about. To stop, be present. And then I think we're ready to do the next thing, which is surrender. I came across this quote today. It was unattributed, so if you said it, tell me and I'll give you credit. But surrender is the intersection between acceptance and change. Surrender, in the spiritual context, I want to tell you, it's not giving up, it's giving in. So once this thing has happened, life got tough, and we've stopped, we've collected ourselves, we've got our breath, we've got present, what we have to do is move into acceptance that this thing has indeed happened. It happened. Whatever it was that was the unexpected thing that made life tough, whether it's the breakup, the divorce, the financial setback, the diagnosis, we move into an acceptance. This is what is. And I love it's the intersection between acceptance, knowing this is what happened, and change. It's this beautiful middle place before we move into the tough getting going, to do it from a place of not resistance, but acceptance. Accepting that this is what is. Because when I said it's not giving up, it's giving in. What are we giving into? We're giving into the power of God, present right here in this situation, present in you. Because when you want to get going, the going gets tough, the tough get going. If you do want to get going, whose power do you want to be going on? Do you want to be going on that triggered, emotional, egoic self? Or do you want to get going with the power of God? And that requires surrender. Surrender is accepting what has happened and saying, I don't even know how to do this. But something does. One of the one things I really love about Unity teaching is that even though we do often talk about God in a personal terms, and we do talk about Jesus as being an expression of God, and so we can talk to Jesus, but we also understand that God is more than a personage or a being, that there are qualities that God is, and one of them is divine intelligence. Our early people, the early writers in New Thought talked about this a lot, that divine intelligence is the nature of spiritual reality, and we are part of that. So when we're surrendering our egoic human mind that only acts with what we know here in the world of form. Divine intelligence knows all and can see around the corners. So when we're giving up the human, giving in to the spiritual reality, then something can happen. I was trying to think of a personal story, and I know that some people, well, Mary Morrissey told me this when I first became a minister. She said, every minister decides early on whether or not they're going to teach from their personal lives. And as you know, most of you know, I have a recovery background, and I've seen people healed by simply telling their story. So I know the power of that. And I was thinking, but y'all have been hearing me for about 6 years. Do I have any stories left? So I was like thinking about what's a surrender story, and one that I haven't talked about before. And the one that kept coming to my mind was my dad's Alzheimer's disease. That was when the going got tough for me and my family. My dad was this pillar of strength and know-how. And, and especially in my 20s when my life was chaotic, my dad was this anchor for me. Never gave up on me, ever. And believe me, many people were starting to, because it was not looking good. But my dad never gave up on me. I remember at one point, due to my drinking and my poor credit choices, my credit was just in the tank, so I couldn't, and I needed a car. My 86 Ford Escort had 180,000 miles on it, and I hadn't changed the oil real regularly, and it was just on its last breath, and I couldn't get a car loan. My dad co-signed, got me a nice used car, and then I rolled it in a ditch, really, and he helped me get it fixed. It was amazing what my dad did for me. Do you understand that even as an adult, I depended on him? At some point, though, I began to find my own strength and recovery, but I still always looked to my dad for advice and for wisdom. And then about 10 years ago, it was clear something was going on. That I think that's about when it was, when Mom realized that he was meticulous with numbers and details, and he had really messed up the checkbook, and she knew that something was up. His father also had Alzheimer's. So we were in denial for a long time. We didn't want it to be true, because my dad was so strong. And then it became clear. And we had seen the path with my grandfather, so it's sometimes called the long goodbye. And we just began to say goodbye to parts of him. I remember the first time I visited when he didn't know who I was, how heartbreaking that was. But it was a little before that I had a moment of surrender. I could either be in resistance and angry and sad that this amazing father that I had is gone, or I can accept that this is the way his soul is choosing to leave the earth, and I can be present with what remains of my dad. And if I hadn't been able to surrender, that place of the intersection between acceptance and change, you get that? I accepted that my father had this condition, and then I changed in the way I approached him in this condition. Last year at Christmas, I think I have shared this before, but I went home, and he hadn't been able to walk for about 9 months, and so my mom she deserves sainthood for the way she cared for him. But he was in a very sweet space. He didn't know who I was, but I sat next to him, and he held my hand, and he just talked about God and family and how good God is and how wonderful family is and how important. And we had a morning of such love and pure connection that I would never have gotten to if I hadn't surrendered. If I had still been needing him to be what he used to be. So I don't know what your situation where life got tough for you is. It seems like we have a few more people here than we normally do on Wednesday, so I'm guessing something in the title must have called to some of you that something in your life has gotten tough. And the truth is, we all have things in our life that are tough. There's a misunderstanding or maybe a misapplication of unity principle. We are creative beings. The very creative power of God is within us, and we can create our destiny. Don't make no mistake. But sometimes we think we can control every molecule in the universe with our thought, and we're not meant to do that. We're supposed to move in harmony with it. And surrender is where we let go of our need to have it look at a certain way and have the timeline be exactly what we think. And we trust that God's good is being revealed, even with your dad getting Alzheimer's disease. That was the place that God called me to in surrender. And so lastly, when the going gets tough, the tough need to get going. I have that first place where I said, if you don't really do the stop, you get stuck. I have done that and stayed there for years. A few years ago, a friend of mine who is a fabulous spiritual financial author, as a matter of fact, we're bringing her here in October. You're going to love her. Her name is Reverend Karen Russo. She is the author of the book called The Money Keys. I was struggling with some financial stuff, and it's kind of amazing. I wasn't quite a minister yet, but I was getting close. But denial just seems to be persistent. I was teaching people not to do denial and unaware that I was still doing it. That there was a certain issue in my financial life that was kind of eating my lunch, and I wasn't talking about it, wasn't doing anything about it. I was stuck. But I finally did at least get enough going on to call her. And actually, we were at a conference in California. And we took a walk along the beach, and I remember we sat on this bench overlooking the Pacific Ocean at the Asilomar State campgrounds there, and beautiful, beautiful place. And I was telling her where I was and my embarrassment of it and the shame, and she listened with nothing but wisdom and love. And she said, "Michael, it sounds to me as though the masculine energy around your finances is just cut off." And I didn't even know exactly what that meant, but I could almost hear something ring in the air. I was stuck, and it was time to make some action, to take some action, and I was unwilling. So I think that was sort of my stop and surrender moment. Surrender and actually tell somebody what was going on, and then I knew it was time to begin to take some action. There was some debt. I didn't know how it was going to happen, how I was going to get out of it. But I just started taking steps. Just calling, asking people for advice. And then a friend of mine said, I'm not making much in my CDs right now. I'll just loan you whatever that is at half the interest rate you're paying. She had the money. She made money. I saved money, and it was done within a couple of years. There comes a time when you just got to move. And you don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to have the plan A to Z to make the next step. But and this is where I'm talking to different temperaments. If you're the type that stews and ruminates and is afraid to take an action, sometimes you just have to take a step. And it may not be the right step, but it will reveal itself to be the wrong step if you take it. And that gives you what? Information. That didn't work. Let me try this. And I can't tell you when it's time to sit and stop, and when it's time to surrender, and when it's time to move. But guess what? I don't have to tell you that. You have infinite intelligence living in you. What I'm trying to offer you is just a little 1, 2, 3 plan that seems to work for me. And sometimes I get off track. But if I will get quiet and I'll surrender to what is, then something will be revealed. And it just becomes time I've just got to move. Take an action. And then the next one will be revealed. The thing I wanted to kind of bring home about this idea of when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That I'm not crazy about the word tough. I mean, I'm tough. You're tough. I mean, if you've lived life, you get some toughness about you. But tough can also have this connotation of being rigid. So the word I'd like us to replace tough in this old saying is resilient. When the going gets tough, the resilient get going. Isn't that good? Because here's what I'm going to tell you about resilience. It's great. That means you fall down 7 times. How many times do you get up? 8. You just don't quit. That's what I'm talking about next week, about perseverance. I don't want to launch into that too much, but there's just one of the stories that I tell. We all have sort of archetypal stories. Well, that's just the way I am. I'll tell you one of mine. I may not beat you in a sprint, but I'll outlast you. I know how to not quit. I don't know if that's my upbringing. I don't know if that's my genes. I don't know if that's my soul has learned that in other lifetimes. I have no idea. But I know how to stay the course. And along the way, I've learned these other tools like stopping and breathing, surrendering, get my ego out of the way. I should have put another one here. Ask for help. That's why we have spiritual communities. So we have other like-minded spiritual souls, including some who have done some work, and they're called ministers and teachers who might be able to have something to help offer you, some bit of wisdom. And just not quitting, doing the next right thing. It's amazing what can happen. I love this Bible verse from Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, and do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And that is why you can keep going. Because the infinite power, the infinite love, the infinite wisdom of God is with you always. I know sometimes it feels like it's far away, but it's not. It's right with you. You know that corny old thing about the footprints in the sand? You know that, right? That you go along, you're looking back over your life, and you see that in the hard times, they were walking with God, right, or walking with Jesus, and in the hard times, there's only one set of footprints, and you ask, God, why did you leave me when the hard times, when the going got tough? And God says, oh, my child, those are the times I carried you. Corny, true. In those times when it's hard and you just don't know how you're going to get through it, if you don't quit, meaning you continue to breathe, you can continue to put food in your body, show up to the best of your ability, and sometimes it ain't that great. But I said it before, but that isolation thing, man, anyone who's experienced addiction knows that addiction is a shame cycle, and it will put you in this place where you don't want to be around anybody. But you don't have to be an addict to be in one of those places of I just don't want to be seen right now. That is the time that spiritual community can save your ass. And here's the thing, I've said it before, and it's Wednesday night. I won't say this on a Sunday quite yet, but you cannot save your face and your ass at the same time. This idea that I've got to look like I have it all together will keep you isolated and stuck. But because here's the other thing too, vulnerability goes beautifully with resilience. As a matter of fact, the people who are able to be vulnerable and open and just be with what is are the people that are the most resilient. People who are not vulnerable can be rigid. What's that thing Brene Brown says about it's like perfectionism being a 10,000-pound shield that we carry with us? I have really learned to say, I don't know how to do that. And the world did not end when I said it. I mean, we're Marilyn and I. Marilyn's the president of our board. I'm going to just single her out for a second. She and I met on Friday and talking about this transition and lots of details, lots of things. And there's several times like, I don't know what's going to happen. I've never done this before. But within me is the infinite intelligence of God. And around me is Marilyn Huggins. And all of you and all of the amazing community we're creating. We're co-creating this new chapter of our church together, and I am super, super excited. Last week I shared I was a little, some of the criticism was kind of hitting me funny. But whatever that was, it processed through, and I'm just in this place of joy. Amen. Yeah. And creativity. I mean, like Mindy and I were just talking about ideas, things we might try. Just so happy to be here. And I wanted to tell you again, I'm not a quitter. You can't beat the person who never gives up. Isn't that great? The wisdom of Babe Ruth. Gosh, who knew? Evidently, he was not a nice guy, from what I've heard. But he was tough. But isn't that just a spiritual truth right there? Just don't give up. Give in to the power of God within you, but never give up. We're on an amazing journey, my friends. I think that's all I wanted to tell you tonight. Just to review, when the going gets tough, first thing we're going to do is stop. Next thing we're going to do is surrender. And then we're going to become resilient and get going. I love you. God bless you.